Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our weekly webinar and podcast at drdemographics.com. You understand that there's an audio version of this as well, and that you should always look for our past sessions that we've had on our website. Mike, where do they go on our website to see
So there's two places you can go. You can either navigate to, I believe it's the training tab, and you can get to the replay that way, or you can just type in drdemographics.com/replay. Either way, whatever's faster, and it will get you there.
Okay, now I want to go back. We have gotten a crazy amount of interest in our last week's session on the post-pandemic locations to consider. And a lot of people are going, well, how would you know that? Well, I just want to go through real briefly the methodology on how we'd know. We are not saying if there has been a large outbreak of coronavirus that that's not good. That is not what I'm saying at all. In fact, pretty much they're saying it exists almost everywhere, but a lot of people have been asymptomatic. Now, the asymptomatic thing doesn't necessarily mean it's a good place to go. What I am looking at is, first and foremost, is the area have a demographic characteristic that shows it is likely to continue to grow or to develop. There are other areas that are just like having the kiss of death. And I'll talk about one of the states right now that definitely has the kiss of death. Don't go there. And it isn't necessarily because of the pandemic per se, but rather the politics surrounding it and what they're regulating doctors to do or not do. Now, everybody, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm on your side, and I frankly think that there are a lot of people who are against doctors. And I bring this up because I have gone through all 50 states and the territories of the United States to see what are they doing to allow doctors to be able to perform in their practices. And they would generally be considered non-emergency services. So a dentist, an optometrist, a veterinarian, they don't necessarily think what you do is that urgent or life-threatening. And I am saying, oh yeah, that's really good unless you've got an abscessed tooth. Then all of a sudden your focus gets real serious about, is this a serious situation or not? Well, when it's you, it's serious. When you've got a pet that needs to be wormed, or you've got a grandparent who might be with you who needs care, or that somebody's had a heart episode, yeah, that's serious, but it isn't the pandemic. And so people are saying, well, is it that vital? Some states, and I'm going to talk about a couple of them today, have actually taken care to look at what doctors are doing and to figure a date in which they can start doing non-emergency care. But very few of them actually are. I was surprised as I went through the numbers on each of the states in the United States, how many are saying, oh yeah, you want a tattoo? We got it. Yeah, and as for your marijuana dealer, yeah, that is an emergency service and must be cared for. And I'm kind of thinking, you people are out of your friggin' mind. What's wrong with you? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to really go off on that, Mike. But, you know, in Utah, that's just one of the things we do. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I know it's here. Okay. Now, here's the deal. There are lots of opportunities out there and lots of inequalities that are happening state to state. This is a terrible forum for us to really do every state and go through that. I just can't do it. The other thing is a lot of these things are changing on a weekly basis. So I can't. But I do want you to know where I'm seeing opportunities and specifically what those opportunities are. This may surprise you a little bit because some of the places that I'm seeing opportunities may not look like places of opportunity. So let me just see if my magic screen will change. Okay. Now, investigating the states, their plans to reopen and all that, I've been doing that. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm not an epidemiologist, so I'm not going to talk about where I think the virus is going or what it's likely to impact the population. I'm only looking at this from a business point of view, and my orientation is only for doctors. So everybody else, I don't care about your sandwich shop. I'm sorry, I don't care. Now, here's what we're finding, places that I'm recommending that you absolutely avoid. And ironically, it's not all parts of these particular states, But the state of Maine right now is perhaps the worst. They're doing stuff that is basically anti-business, anti-resident, and the result is going to be, I'm almost promising you, the state of Maine is going to lose population even faster than it has been losing it before. Keep in mind, Maine is already an old state. It's the oldest population in the United States. And New Hampshire isn't doing that well by comparison. So those New England states, and I'm going to throw New York into that, have got kind of a bias against private practice, and particularly what I'm going to say is private medicine. They just don't like the idea that doctors are doing something that is not being regulated by a hospital. As I've looked at New York State, upstate is very different from downstate. So in other words, New York City is really the place that if you're thinking about going there, there are going to be some wonderful deals to get a new practice, or I should say purchase someone else's practice. The danger is this, and this is going to be true for a lot of California as well. You're going to find a lot of people who've got patient records, and they're going to say, oh, look how much my practice is worth based upon the work that I've got available. The problem is so many people have been leaving these states, and so many people are kind of bagging any kind of health care. These are the states that are least likely to attract potential patients. So if you were to look at the boroughs of New York, ironically, Manhattan's going to be terrible. Brooklyn's going to be pretty awful as well. However, if you look at Long Island, I think Long Island is going to be a rare and wonderful opportunity for you to purchase, start up, or to take over someone else's practice. Now let's talk about California for a second. California is the biggest state by population in the United States. And here's a weird thing. They've got a love-hate relationship with practices. And the difference is metropolitan areas. So if you go into a fairly densely populated part of California, and I'll use Orange County and Los Angeles counties as an example, they've got some very draconian policies going on. Don't go to the beach. No business should be open. Go outside your house and you can get a ticket. But that's not true everywhere in California, particularly in the Central Valley of California. I'm looking at Kern County North, and frankly, they're acting just like every other Midwest state that wants to grow, and they're trying to do something. So I'm just going to say California is not a single place. Again, there are 5 huge counties in Southern California: San Diego, Orange, Los Angeles, San Bernardino, and Riverside. Those counties are the ones that are having a little bit of a hard time trying to open. But the other parts of California are showing a remarkable amount of a propensity to open, and they're kind of having an attitude. Don't ask me how I know this. Screw the government. I don't care what Sacramento tells me to do. Now, the Sacramento area, and of course the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, Alameda, all those areas, look, those places are actually pretty rigidly locked down. Lots of regulators. But I'm seeing on the fringes of California, in the non-metro areas, there's a lot of potential. And this is also going for the area Placer County North and El Dorado County. They've always been a little bit of a non-California California as far as their regulations. Illinois is interesting because I have seen the same thing happening in Illinois. Now, it's not going to be easy to buy or sell a practice in Illinois or in California, even in New York. However, the attitude that people have toward the opening of practices is indicating that most of Southern Illinois is like, I don't know, I don't live in Springfield, let's go. And I'm seeing that as an odd thing. Michigan, however, is a more compact state, and my gosh, their governor has got a real hate relationship with practices. Now, the reason I'm going through this is if you want to know the best places to consider practicing and the places that you ought to be looking, it's these parts of the various states I'm discussing that are going to show the most potential to open up much faster. So it's not a matter of are they going to open, it's a matter of who's going to open first. Now, Michigan, like I said, is a little bit of a different situation. You've got the state has pretty much got a very firm stay-at-home order, and they've extended it through May 28th. Now, by the way, I hear almost daily a new estimate of when they're going to open up. I can't tell you for sure. But ultimately, it's odd because Michigan is going to have a little civil war going on. And one of the examples is on golfing and motorboating. If you happen to have a canoe and you only have 2 people, go ahead. Have a motorboat and you want to have more than 2 people, they're not so crazy about that. And so what's happening, and I'm talking about this week, is a lot of people are saying, I don't want to play those rules. I'm going to do my own thing. And it's extending to professional practices and other small businesses, including bars and restaurants. Yes, I know that they can get their liquor license pulled and their business licenses, and I'm not trying to have you rebel against that which your elected officials are telling you. But I am going to tell you spontaneously, there are some states, and this is one, that is going to say, we're not playing that game. Now, people are required to wear face coverings in enclosed public spaces. One of the things that you're going to notice is just how much people are doing that and not doing it. So the first sign about how quickly is your practice going to open or the area going to have that potential, count the number of masks. You start seeing people's noses, nostrils, and mouths, you may be in an indication that within the next week or 2, whether or not the state regulates it and allows it, you're going to start seeing it. Now, I'm not saying you ought to rebel and do something illegal. That is not my purpose here. Do things according to the law. However, there are not enough police officers in the world to try to enforce some of these orders. And I'm just telling you, doctors, this is where, if you want to have a successful practice, you're going to have to read the tea leaves and look around at who's on the street. Now, the states that are opening up right now, and I'm not talking about legally, I'm just saying spontaneously, Georgia is probably number 1. Georgia decided it was going to take a radical approach. The sheriff's department, the health department, other regulators went, fine, go forth there, my crackers. And by the way, that's what you call somebody from Georgia. They're kind of spontaneously opening up, but it's also legal. Texas, Florida are also major leaders in this, particularly in the smaller towns in both Texas and in Florida. Now, Miami may be a different story. Tampa may be a little different, but if you start looking at the extreme north and south, in Texas, and especially in Florida, you're going to see a lot of people getting ready to open, even before it's entirely okay and kosher. I'm also going to make special note of the Intermountain states, and this is going to be Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and even New Mexico. They are saying, we're opening, and doctors, if you're in one of these states and you are not right now getting ready with your banner to go on your roof, you're falling behind. Now, in order to help with this, Mike and I have put together a list of services on what you're going to need to open. There are a lot of really good advisors in dental and medical offices, the consultants, who are trying to help you to do the same thing. I'm not saying they're not good. I've got a couple of friends who are actually doing a very good job of this. But I'm going to recommend you consider our guidelines because ours are almost entirely, well, they're less expensive than others. It doesn't take a long course, and you can do them fairly quickly. But here's the bottom line, and it kind of goes along with what I said earlier. You guys, the media locally is not inclined to support business. It's not that they're anti-business, but it's just they don't care and they don't know what you're doing. So don't rely upon the local news to tell people that you are opening or what you can do. You have to do that. That is entirely on you, as I'll mention in just a second. You guys, unless you're putting up signs and you're doing emails and you're doing consultations, you're going to fall behind. And my great fear for you good people watching is that there are some big corporates out there that are going to take and eat your lunch unless you're ready, because they are, and they're better funded than you. Now, I want to talk about a few key factors that are determining whether or not a state or an area is going to be good in light of the factors that we're seeing right now. there is a bias against opening, and it's a serious bias. And in some states, and I mentioned Maine and New York and Pennsylvania, they are not doing it. And this is kind of ubiquitous. Almost everybody in the area thinks the same thing. However, there are regions that are entirely different from this. But that bias is changing. And especially as people begin to say, you know, the weather's warm, I want to go to the beach. I want to play in the boat. I want to do something with my kids. We've been in the house together too long. And that's where I think the bias is changing. Now, the other thing is, I want to point out there's a difference between bias and confusion. Most people get their media from a national source. And so they're not getting something that says, in my state, in my county, in my area, we're allowed to do things. Therefore, there is confusion of what is legal and permissible. Do you know who has the responsibility to really tell people about what's legal and permissible in your area regarding your practice? Yeah, you. So let's kind of get serious about that. Now, as I look at states like Minnesota and Maryland, they're putting May 11th. Maryland is a little vaguer because they keep changing the date in which elective surgeries can go on. And by the way, they put dentistry, optometry, dermatology into that idea of elective surgery, even though it's not done in a hospital or even theoretically in an operatory. So what people are finding out is there may be things that are legal by the law, but nobody ever talked about it, or they may have heard something on the network news, and that is almost all New York centric. It is not for your state. And maybe Illinois and maybe San Francisco are getting the word out, but the point is your state, your county is not the same, so there is inherent confusion. The plan's first stage often includes small businesses that are doing things, but what I thought was interesting is only just Maryland and Minnesota and just a very few others have actually talked about what healthcare practices are supposed to do. For the rest of them, they're sort of assuming you'll make it up as you go. Whatever. Now, that means that optometrists, dermatologists, even oncologists are sort of left out, not being able to say anything. Now, what's the answer to this? It is signage, a banner on your building. It is proactive emails that you're sending out. If you need help with those things, that's what our practice opening special is all about, to say what you can and should say, and we even list prices and the types of things that you can do. So the confusion factor, just remember, most states have no forecast to allow elective surgeries. If you called and asked them, well, is this allowed? They'll go, maybe. Maybe if I know about it, maybe if I understood what dermatology was all about, Mohs surgery, haven't got a clue, and they don't. So I'm just telling you, don't rely upon them. Now, there are a couple of other factors I've got to tell this group because this is important about where you can practice and where there are problems. And one of those is the employee headwinds. Now, I've had some discussions recently. Yesterday, I had a talk with a brilliant consultant for optometry. And she said something that you already know, probably. And that is, a lot of people have applied for unemployment. And that is paying sometimes 3 and 4 months worth of payments, and it may be more than what your salary is. So what a lot of people have done is they said, woo, we're going on vacation. They may assume that if you call them back and they don't come, they're free, they can keep the money, but that isn't necessarily true. It varies state and county by state and county. But I'm just telling you what a lot of employees are doing is they're kind of cutting out. The problem is, obviously, you got to find someone to help. Now, I'm going to offer the challenge to all of you to figure out what the requirements are for unemployment in your jurisdiction. I'm not going to say that I know it. But some of you are going to get caught with your pants around your ankles if you don't figure out that employees cannot necessarily ignore a call back to work in some states and municipalities. I won't give you the examples, but I'll simply say it's not as simple as it may sound. Now, I want to talk about a weird thing we're seeing also out there, and it has to do with practice locations and the potential for where you are practicing and promoting the office. Please hear me out, because I don't know any place else that's talking much about it. I'm calling it the new retirement plan, in which, let's say you've got 3 or 4 doctors working in the same office. They're all partners. They've got 2 or 3 locations. And the senior guy just says, you know, it says in my contract that I can have you buy me out, and you don't have a choice. You have to do it. That was part of our employment agreement. We're seeing a lot of people exercising those agreements. One of the reasons they're doing it is because they said, I don't want to come into the office and sit around looking at the walls. I want to be busy and I want to be making money. And they're realizing that may not be happening for a long time in their area. Now, do I think that someone's going to screw you over? Maybe, you know, because sometimes people just sort of go, look, I've been doing this now for a long time. I'm 64 years old. I've got a spouse who wants to travel, and now is a good time for us to sell the practice. And the practice valuation may or may not be included in that plan for transition. Maybe, maybe not. So I'm just saying, guys, you're going to have to figure this out, because there is probably going to be somebody who's going to say, I'm not getting what I put into practice. I want someone else to pick up my burden. And I just see a lot of doctors doing it. Now, the reason that that's significant is because you, if you're in a partnership, maybe in that circumstance that it'll become a discussion. But the other part of this is, let's say you're trying to figure out where to put a practice. And you're saying, you know, that guy that is across the street used to be really busy, but he's been out of town a lot, or hasn't been here, or they've got a hillside mansion that they want to hang out in. Guys, this is a big opportunity for you. Now, I'm not trying to advise younger doctors to say, go out and defeat existing practices. But I'm going to say, when I have been doing demographic reports the last 2 weeks, I have been finding that there is a lot of soft spot in competition. So while before you may say, oh, we have a ratio of 1 general dentist to 1,400, which is, you know, pretty close to average. Physicians, orthodontists, dermatologists, veterinarians, there may have been a practice there right now, but they haven't been seeing patients for a long time, and they haven't been working on the idea of rebuilding their practice. I'm not trying to say I want you to screw anybody over, but I am saying there are opportunities out there that you may not be thinking about. And so here's what happened when I was talking to a couple of doctors this week. They said, Scott, you know what we really need is a quick way to do a demographic report that is reliable and tell me what is going to happen. Historical precedent has been what most demographers do. We also do projections on how desirable a practice area might be. Now, there are certain calculations that we use to determine whether or not an area is going to be quote unquote soft regarding competition ratios. Now, that falls into this thing that new retirement plans and opportunities are arising. I'm not saying that you have to run out and try to purchase someone else's records, although frankly, that may be an option which many of you had not considered up to now. There may be an area that is showing significant projected growth, and you've always thought, well, there's already other practices there that are taking up that space. There may be opportunities that you haven't seen before. So in order to do this, and by the way, we're doing this only with people who are on our podcasts, webinars, and who go by our website. We have what we call the flash report. For a limited time only, we're doing essentially a demographic report, half price. That's right. This is the crazy Eddie of demographics talking again. But here's the deal. It is a full demographic report. It's a little smaller geographically. It doesn't take as many zip codes or geographic radius. But guys, it'll give you the demographics up to the minute, psychographics, it'll give you maps, competition ratios as best we can figure it out. And I'm going to tell you, I wish I could tell you what was on everybody's minds right now as far as competition. But when we're looking at an area, I do look at the age and the experience of the existing doctors within the neighborhood of a place you're considering. It isn't a straight calculation. Now, are there going to be errors? I can almost promise you there are, because not everybody's telling everybody what their plans are. But I'm going to tell you, we have some algorithms that we're using that are telling us, is this area potentially soft? And of course, the projections, we take in drive times and zip codes, and also analysis of how much traffic there is going by your site. Now, I'm doing this because, frankly, there have been a lot of good doctors who've helped me through life. And if I can help you who've been watching our podcast and listening to our webinar, that is what I want to do. So it's only $225. It's about half price, maybe a little less. And you guys, this is a limited opportunity, so take advantage of it now. Mike, the order form is online now, right?
It is. As a matter of fact, if you, for right now anyways, if you go to the, just to the homepage, it's right there linked, right off the homepage, but it's also under the reports section of the website.
Okay, so we're calling it a flash report?
It's called a flash report, yep. No, it's called a rush report, I'm sorry.
What's that?
A rush report.
Rush report, okay. Apologies to anybody who's a radio personality. It wasn't intended to step on its brand, but okay. But you guys, we're not leaving it up very long. We've got a little bit of a space of time to do this. We've got the data. So if you're smart, do this today. Here's the other little thing. You know, we stopped doing these when we don't have any more time. And that's because Mike and I actually write them. These are not something that is just an automated thing that you buy from an old database. Those databases are really out of date and not going to give you good data. So guys, please, flash report, info@drdemographics.com will get you to us. And Mike, I want to just turn a little time over to you. What wisdom have you got to share with us?
Well, you know, I think the biggest thing is I've been listening to you this week and especially last week is as hard as what this time is for all of us, for all businesses, and especially for doctors, and especially in states where they're particularly rigid in the way that their opening process is going, you really need to take advantage of this opportunity to educate yourself on whether if you're looking for a new place to practice, where you're going to practice, and if you're not already placed, then really educating yourself on the pros and cons and the future outlook of the place where you might want to place your practice. It's a great opportunity because you're not mired in a bunch of patients that are filling all of your time. You've got energy, you've got time for research. And so, yes, it's fun to play pickleball with the kids for a little while, but pickleball time is over, and now we're at heavy research time. And the resources are out there. Like I say, we have 30 years of research and resource to provide for you. I think that's extremely generous, this rush report. And again, it's something that we've never offered it before. We're not probably going to offer it again, just because it gives you a unique flash view of where you want to be and have all the critical data that you need to be able to make a decision. And I might include that it also, you also get the analysis and the after report analysis. And that's something that is extremely valuable.
Well, the numbers are important, but it's going to be the wisdom that comes from looking at these numbers in these locations for years that I really think is when it's going to pay off for you. So yeah, if you want to write to us, that'd be fine. Our phones are kind of busy right now, so I'm not recommending that you call, but if you can write to us, we'll try to write back as quick as we can. Our time is just about up. Mike, you are, of course, brilliant, and I so appreciate working with you. By the way, one of the things about Mike I really like, he knows business development and building more than almost anybody I know. So if you're looking for an area with potential, he's got some unique skills that really help. So everybody, thank you so much. We'll see you again next week with another exciting episode at drdemographics.com. And thank you.